and gentlemen, welcome to The Late Show. I'd like to introduce to you our amazing host, Mr. Sean Bray.
Oh, all right. Hey, good morning. Wait, I've got more energy than you? Come on, no way. Good morning. How are we doing today? All right, well, it is my pleasure to welcome you to Loyola's first Late Show. It's the first one, so we didn't get a prime late time evening spot. So we took the early slot, but that's okay, right? That's okay. So thank you for being here. This is a great looking crowd. Give yourself a round of applause. Look at this group. Sunday morning, you're still awake. No one brought food that they're gonna throw, right? Okay, good, we're good. So I just wanna introduce myself. My name is Sean Bray, and I am the Director of Campus Ministry. I'm a co-chair for the implementation of racial justice training on our campus, and I'm the host for this session on mission and values with the class of 2021. And I gotta tell you, we have a great show for you today. This is gonna be fantastic. I don't know, we have some film, we have some interactive experiences, we have some great student stories. So, all right, so we're gonna give you a great action-packed, fun-filled exploration of mission, values, and the Jesuit tradition. And you're thinking out there, Sean Bray, I'm gonna hold you to that. So hold me to it, okay? So here's gonna be our first biggest challenge. It's like a little game show. It's called Can Sean Talk and Work a PowerPoint Projector at the Same Time? So bear with me, so let's see. So you're the class of 2021, right? Just, hold on, let's have a little more excitement. You're the class of 2021, right? Yeah. And you all have been through this discernment process that led you to the seat you're sitting in today, right? Is this working? There we are. You are here. You have arrived at Loyola University, Maryland, right? And you've been doing a lot over these last couple days. You've been moving in and setting up your room. You've been saying goodbye to family. You've been meeting new people, beginning new journeys, possibly encountering some of your lifelong friends. Or, as we heard Andrew talking up here, maybe your future partner, I don't know. You've been engaging in dialogue. You've arrived here to have difficult conversations about what is going on in our world and in our lives. You're hearing new experiences and new stories, maybe stories that challenge your experience. Oh, I did it there. You're also learning about the expectations of what it means to be a member of this community. And you've already started to build up the community that we call Loyola. Am I going? Where's that? Whoop, there we are. And hopefully you're having some fun. I heard casino night was a blast. Who had fun at casino night? Really? I don't think this was an actual photo from your casino night, but maybe, I think, a previous class year, right? So this is an exhilarating time for us, right? Your beginning comes with a lot, probably a mix of emotions. Is that fair to say? It's probably a mix of emotions. You're coming in here with hopes and a lot of possibility that's before you. The possibility of finding your passion. The possibility of encountering new ways of thinking. The possibility of love and relationship. The possibility of deeper understanding of yourself, of God, of others, and the world. These cards aren't really flying like they do on The Tonight Show, but bear with me. So, and there was a lot of goodness in this experience that you're going to have here at Loyola. Look around you. No, go ahead, look around. Look to the left, look to the right, look behind you. These are your companions for the next 4 years. What an exciting opportunity to get to know your classmates and what the possibility of what you will do in your time here. At Loyola, we have this attachment. We have this grounding around a Jesuit concept called cura personalis. And cura personalis means, who out there, evergreen, what does cura personalis mean? Care for the whole person, right? So in your experience here, we hope that you will take time to develop yourself as a whole person, to care for yourself as a whole person, right? So we hope that you're going to engage your professors, not only in the classroom, but outside of the classroom. We hope that you're going to go out and you're going to support the Greyhounds on the field and on the court. We hope that you're going to spend time at the FAC. We hope you're going to engage in service, go on retreat, attend late night events with student activities, find your lifelong friends, explore Baltimore, attend a play or a conference, or concert, or a conference. Seek out the counseling center. Find mentors and people who inspire you. There is so much that Loyola has to offer you. Take advantage of it. Take advantage of all that Loyola and Baltimore has to offer you. Now, this sounds like a pretty good pitch. It almost sounds like I'm selling you on an all-inclusive resort, right? I mean, you go downstairs, you have food, you have this place to sleep, all these activities. This sounds great. It almost can be perceived as a bubble if I stopped there in the story. But the reality is we are not contained only at Loyola. We exist in and of the world. And that gives us some bearing on who we are and what your experience here will be. It means that we also live in a world where there is tremendous goodness, where there is inspiration, imagination, there is love. There are people who are building relationship to overcome the barriers that they face every day. But we also live in a world where we experience hate, or poverty, oppression, racism, tragedy, and injustice. These things exist in our world. And we could just stay here at Loyola this whole time and say, wow, we've got a great thing and we're just having a lot of fun. And this is really helping me. We also live in a world where it can feel like we are divided, that we are polarized, we are entrenched in a way that maybe you haven't experienced before in our nation, in our communities, in our family. So while you're at Loyola these next 4 years, we invite you and we hope we inspire you to become whole persons of solidarity for the real world. Whole persons of solidarity for the real world. Another way we say that is through our mission, to learn, lead, and serve in a diverse and changing world. And what ultimately we hope you become are Ignatian citizens who go out into the world with your gifts and talents to take action. This morning, we're going to take some time exploring mission, values, and the Jesuit tradition, and we're going to do that through stories. Because the stories we tell also tell us. So let us begin by telling the story of St. Ignatius, whose life, imagination, and work led to this educational system that you are entering into. I missed a few slides, look at that.
Oh, hey. Yeah, that's right. Talking Olive. What you might call an attempt at making the next 10 minutes a lighthearted journey for all. So I'm a stuffed Spanish olive. I grew up in California, but I take my heritage pretty seriously. You could say that my motivation stems from the deep Spanish roots of my family tree. Anyway, for culture, beauty, and outright influence in the shape of the world as we know it, Spain enjoys its share. Cervantes, Picasso, conquistadors, Sherry, St. Ignatius of Loyola, paella. Ooh, wait, go back one. No, not the paella. Ah, I know what you're thinking. Awesome. A happening profile of a saint. Well, Ignatius didn't start off as a saint. As a matter of fact, you could say that he took the scenic route to sainthood. Well, here we are, the Castle of Loyola in northern Spain, birthplace of St. Ignatius. Not the humble beginnings one might imagine for a saint. In 1491, Inigo Lopez de Loyola was born into a family of minor nobility. At age 13, he was sent to live with Juan Velázquez, a family friend, who also happened to be a treasurer in the court of Ferdinand and Isabella. Ignatius the young courtier developed grand visions of chivalry and battlefield glory. He took great care of and pride in his physical appearance and was no stranger to the ladies. In addition to walking around town wearing a sword, he was known to drink, gamble, and even brawl. Yup, he was about as far from a saint as you'd like to get, but hey, he's young. There's still time. By his late 20s, Ignatius found direction and purpose as a respected army officer. Though he was a dedicated and courageous soldier, his lifestyle stayed the same, and his motivation still leaned toward the vain and glorified. Funny enough that it was his appetite for glory that would change his life. Pamplona, May 21st, 1521. Outnumbered 13-1 and encouraged by Ignatius, Mayor Miguel Herrera chooses to fight rather than surrender Pamplona to invading French forces. 6 hours into the futile battle, Ignatius, leading the effort, is struck by a cannonball that rips open his left calf and shatters his right shin. With their larger-than-life champion gravely wounded, the Spanish troops lose their spirit and surrender. The French were so impressed with Ignatius' skill and bravery that they treated his wounds and carried him home to Loyola. Sorry. This is where things get ugly. Doctors had to re-break and reset Ignatius' leg. After it healed, a protruding bone created a lump, which did not agree with Ignatius' vanity. He had the extra bones sawn off and the shortened legs stretched out with weights. Since the state of medicine in 1521 was soaked rags and rusty saws, and television was a good 450 years off, Ignatius began a very long, painful, and boring recovery. To pass the time, Ignatius read the only 2 books in the house, The Life of Christ and the lives of the saints. Not his first choice by far, but better than nothing. Gradually, though, as he reflected for days and months on end upon what he was reading, the thoughts and desires that had always motivated Ignatius were being challenged by an increasing desire to serve Christ in some meaningful way. With his wounds healed, and after a lot of contemplation on his place in the world, and against his family's protests, Ignatius turns away from a life of wealth, excitement, and nobility, and decides to travel to the Holy Land to serve pilgrims there. He sets out for the sanctuary at Montserrat, where he confesses his sins for 3 days, leaves his sword at the altar of the Black Madonna, and trades his fancy clothes for those of a beggar. A penniless drifter, Ignatius finds shelter in a cave in the nearby town of Manresa. Though he has confessed his sins, he struggles with his own humanity, his relationship with God, his ultimate role. Over the course of the next year, as Ignatius meditates on these things, he jots down reflections on his prayer experiences. These notes become the basis for the spiritual exercises, which have allowed millions of people to better understand themselves, each other, and their relationship with God for over 500 years. But that's a whole different video. Though he lived with hunger, sickness, and uncertainty throughout his time in Manresa, Ignatius was realizing life-altering truths, the greatest of which came as he rested on the banks of the Cardonner River one afternoon. Staring into the water, he was overcome by an understanding that God was in all things, and that his presence wasn't confined to buildings or ceremonies. This great revelation of the dynamic nature and presence of God in everyday life would be a major founding principle of the Jesuits. More importantly, it motivates Ignatius to stop living in a cave and get going to the Holy Land. By way of Barcelona and Venice, Ignatius lands in the port of Jaffa in August of 1523, and after a short time in Jerusalem, he's sent right back by the Franciscans. They didn't want to be responsible for the safety of a pilgrim do-gooder wandering around an inhospitable city. Back in Spain, Ignatius began to counsel others in the basics of his spiritual exercises. But the Inquisition was on, and the authorities weren't thrilled with a layman teaching his original concepts. Though eventually set free, he was barred from preaching until he secured some credentials, by way of an advanced university degree. See where this is going? Well, Ignatius's childhood education left something to be desired, namely Latin. So, starting from scratch, 33-year-old Ignatius swallowed his pride and enrolled himself in classes with little kids and teenagers. After 2 years of being the only student with a beard, Ignatius was ready for college. He got into trouble again at the University of Alcala and was jailed, after which he went to the University of Salamanca. Sort of. Tired of the harassment and lost in the inflexible education structure of Spanish institutions at the time, Ignatius headed off to Paris. At the U of Paris, Ignatius found an entirely different educational experience that stressed progressively building knowledge and active participation throughout a course of study. He also finds like-minded individuals like Francis Xavier and Peter Faber. After completing his studies and being ordained, Ignatius and a handful of buddies set up in Rome. Since the Holy Land was off limits, they decided that the best way to serve would be to form a community at the disposal of the Pope. Though they had never intended on forming an organized group, on September 27, 1540, Pope Paul III gave formal approval to the brandy new order of the Society of Jesus. But there was a lot of work to be done, and with only 10 members, the Jesuits knew they would need greater numbers to have a meaningful impact on the world. Knowing the importance of a solid education, Ignatius and the Jesuits opened schools in Europe and Asia to instruct young recruits. By 1548, 10 colleges were turning out hundreds of highly educated young men, and the public took notice. It wasn't long before the Jesuits were asked to open schools for everyone, something they had never anticipated. From then on, the number of Jesuits soared, and Ignatius worked like a dog setting up schools and universities all over the world. So here we are, 28 Jesuit colleges and universities in the United States alone, where students study philosophy, law, medicine, theology, business, film, engineering, you name it. The scope of disciplines reaches back to a letter Ignatius wrote in 1551, stating that those who are now merely students in time will depart to play diverse roles. Their good education in life and doctrine will be beneficial to many others, with the fruit expanding more widely every day. Jesuit institutions require students to look beyond themselves and to participate in a world that could benefit from their talents. So, wondering where you fit into this picture? Segway! Whether a student, professor, or staff member, you're a part of a unique tradition in education that values critical thinking, social responsibility, and personal development for the betterment of all humankind. This isn't just a place to study, teach, or work. It's a state of being that is constantly evolving in concert with the world of which it is part.
Okay, that is one way of telling the story of St. Ignatius, right? And that story is much more extensive, right? So another way of saying that, I could also say that's not all of the story of St. Ignatius. Come on, that's a dad joke, right? That's a dad joke. Michael was saying, throwing a dad joke. I got a dad joke in. So this is one of the stories. So why do we tell this story of St. Ignatius to you? Well, because St. Ignatius was very concerned with helping souls. And he developed a spirituality, right? And that spirituality has a number of characteristics. You can read them up there on the wall. I'm not going to read them all to you. But one of the things that was very important for Ignatius was he recognized that God was in everything, in all of his experiences, right? He also believed that there was a commitment to action with that. He believed in discernment. He believed in helping people discern their relationship, to know God more deeply and discern what they should be, who they should be in the world. And so from that discernment model, we end up with this Ignatian pedagogy. I'm going to tell you things you're like, why is he talking about this? It's kind of boring. What does it have to do with me? Well, I'm telling you this because this model is really going to influence your education here, your context. It's important for you to know the time, the history, the politics, where you come from. That's all part of your context. That's important for us to know. And you're going to explore that through classes here. You also bring an experience of life. And so do the people around you. They all bring different experiences of life. You're also going to be engaged in reflection. We're going to ask you to be critical thinkers in your education, because we're going to need you to not only think critically about the problems of our world and how to solve them, but to use your imagination in how you do that. And then we're going to want you to take action. I remember this same panel that was up here for Just Mercy. There was a lot of people standing out here in the aisle asking the same question I always find myself asking. What do we do? Well, sometimes we have to go through this beginning part. We have to really understand the situation. We have to spend some time learning about the experiences of people in those experiences. And then we need to reflect on it before we can get to action. Why? Why do we do this? Well, if you ask the Society of Jesus, who founded, right, this Jesuit education system, this piece I want to just point out. We need to educate persons of competence, conscience, compassion, men and women who are ready to embrace and promote all that is fully human, who are committed to working for the freedom and dignity of all people, and who are willing to do so in cooperation with others equally dedicated to the reform of society and its structures. We hope that your education will lead you there, right? We've talked about our mission of why we educate. Our values also help us know who we are.
That's a good question.
I really couldn't answer that for you.
10 core values. 6.
14. There's 10, right?
Service and community.
There's diversity,
community, academic excellence.
Academic excellence. Definitely something going towards justice. Okay, it's a pretty good streak so far.
community, integrity.
integrity, diversity, community, academic integrity, constant challenge to improve. Did I say justice? Maybe justice? Yes, justice.
Academic excellence, leadership, community service, justice, career personalis.
Cure personalis.
We're here faith, spirit, something relating to no
Friendship. No, I don't know. We're friends. Oh God.
Roll, go Hounds.
All right, how about a round of applause for that video? All those people engaged in trying to, we had some evergreens here. Lydia, is Lydia here today? Lydia who put this together? Talk about skills and talents, right? Lydia put this together for us. She was out on the paved walkways of Loyola, hunting down people to talk about the values. And I just want to point out, if you ever get cornered and you go, boy, that's a lot of values, Sean. I don't know that I'm going to pull it off the cuff. Just remember to do this phrase, go Hounds. Right? Go Hounds, that works, okay? So I love that phrase. But because there are so many, right, there they are. There's 10 values, right? Academic excellence, service, integrity and honesty, leadership, justice, community, diversity, discernment, challenge to improve, the constant challenge to improve, care for the whole person. Right? This is what helps anchor us in what we do, how we educate and how we care for you and what we're going to ask you to do while you are here, right? Now, there's also the reality that these, our mission, our values, anchor us and give us direction. But there's also the reality that you come to this institution with your own values, values that have been steeped and cultivated in your families, in your schools, through sports teams, through faith communities, through service, right? There's a lot of ways, and you're bringing all those values to this experience. And that's really exciting for us. So, I promised you that we were going to explore this more through story. We've had a couple films. We've heard the story of St. Ignatius. I've talked at you for way too long. I'm seeing people glaze over. So let's get into the really good stories, all right? So our first guest tonight is a senior. He's from Oakland, New Jersey. He majors in finance, minoring in music. Hopefully he'll be able to sing a little bit for us. No? No, okay. You might see him involved in CCSJ at Alana Services, singing in the gospel choir though, playing ultimate frisbee, and he's a member of our Green and Gray Society. Please welcome Joey Patrone. Joey.
Hi. Hi, Sean. How are you?
Good to see you. Thanks for coming. Have a seat. So, just so you know, we reached out to some students on campus because we said, you know, how are our students living into our values? What have you found? So, Joey, could you talk a little bit about, you know, going into your senior year now? Wow. Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Do you remember sitting out here in those seats?
Yeah, it flies by. It's insane.
It's insane. It's crazy. And here you are. But now you have some experience that you can share with our class of 2021. I'm a little shocked. I mean, the class of 2021, I feel like if you hear 2021, you should give a big woo. All right, let's try it again. Do you have any experience to share with the class of 2021 today? All right, that's good. That's good. Now, Joey, you're going into your senior year. You've had some experiences here. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about what of Loyola's mission, values has informed or inspired you?
Yeah. So, looking at the core values that we just saw. I guess like I can talk about the constant need to improve, cure, personalis, and discernment, right? So I wanted to be very involved with campus and Loyola because I think, although we are here for a academic excellence and trying to be here to be educated, I think you're going to hear a lot of like jargon and like things like that of like what's the Loyola experience, right? So I think like it's kind of like being there for others and like being very involved in the campus. So like I said, Sean kind of like listed a lot of things that I do, but I feel like I can just like pull out like a whole scroll of like what I do. But like I said, like for Cure Personalis, it's talking about the mind, body, and spirit. So I think like going to the FAC or like being involved in like whatever clubs, as well as like kind of like taking a step back and like constantly thinking of what you want to do, right? Because I think this is your first week at college. You guys are probably like, oh, like what's going on? Like what's, this is a lot of like activities, a lot of presentations. But like be involved, I would say, like, I think like always like being committed to whether it be like whatever clubs you're a part of. So I'm part of like I've been on the executive board for the Asian Cultural Alliance since sophomore year. So I was treasurer, president, and then vice president this year. I also do Ultimate Frisbee, I sing in the gospel choir. It's a lot of things, but like I think like you want to be intentional about what things you want to do because like I said, like these 4 years fly by. You know, it's like I said, it's crazy that it's already going by, but I'd say just always be intentional and like thinking of like taking a step back what you want to do.
Great, thank you. And you know, as you're talking, you named ways that you've kind of been drawn to some actions, some service, clubs. How have you lived this out? Can you give us an example of maybe one way you've lived this out while you've been here at Loyola?
Okay. So I also work for CCSJ. So for you guys that don't know, like CCSJ is the Center for Community Service and Justice. So right, I think it's important to give back to the community you're in. And like Sean was talking about like this Loyola bubble we're a part of, but it's true, like I think like if you don't really take the time to go out and be in the community, you can be stuck in this bubble of like of being in Loyola and just like kind of just not really being a part of the world. And I think like that really does not do justice for what Loyola's mission is being men and women for others in a diverse and changing world. I think I got that right.
You got that right. You got that. You're good. You're good.
So I am the service coordinator for a couple of high schools in like Federal Hill and like Fells Point. And I think it's important to not only do the service and like be there with the students, but also think of like, why do we even have those types of service, right? We never really take the time to consider, and that's why I like the justice part of it. You like, you saw all those like pictures of all like the tragedies and like racism and all like the isms we have in this world and all like the prejudice we have in this world. But it's important to, while you're doing the actions, to be intentional, like thinking and taking a step back of like, why do we even have this, and like what are the issues that I can tackle as a person? Because it's a daunting task, right? To be think you're gonna save the world, but like I think you should start by being where you are and how can you change where you're at.
Thank you very much,
Yeah,
Joey.
thank
How about a big round of applause for Joey? Thank you, thank you. Joey, let me offer you a mint.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm gonna have you slide down one chair. And our next guest is a senior from Paterson, New Jersey. Majoring, got a little New Jersey love. Anyone from New Jersey in here? Oh, all right, there you go, yeah. She's majoring in political science with a minor in gender studies. She's one of your Messina Evergreens. She's one of your Messina Evergreens. President of the Caribbean Student Union. Founding member of CICE, the Council for Inclusion, Change, and Equity, an advisor, a member of the Advisory Board for Racial Justice Training on Campus. Please welcome Alicia Espinal Mesa. So Alicia, you know the question I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask, in your time here at Loyola, what are the values that you have been attracted to?
I think as someone who kind of came to Loyola not really knowing what Jesuit education was, not really knowing who the Jesuits were, and then having my experiences here teach me those things, one of the values that I really came to find myself in and became intentional in the way that I approach things was justice. Definitely, it has guided my time here at Loyola and shown me what I can do and that kind of thing.
Okay, great, thank you. And you've had some experience coming in here, now a senior. You've taken on some new roles in leadership. Has there been anything about your experience that challenged you and led you to live more deeply into one of these values?
Yeah, so for me, when I first arrived here at Loyola, my first semester, was a very interesting time in Baltimore. It was the year that the Baltimore uprising occurred, and a lot of the times I was kind of walking around campus, not really knowing, being in a new city for the first time, not knowing a lot of what was going on in my surroundings and kind of having to take it upon myself to learn that. And that really was a year where it was very transformational for me, kind of having to learn how to navigate the city and also how to be a part of the city in a way that was, that called me to be the person that I am and that I wanted to be based on those values.
So you've spent some time kind of learning about your experience here, spending some time in context. What were the actions that have come forward from understanding your context here, your experience, and then moving towards action through your values?
So for me, being a student of color on campus, it was a big part of culture shock at first because I'd been used to being a part of communities that were very diverse my entire life. And then kind of coming here and realizing, I'm one of a small group. It was very different for me. But you said, what action?
What actions have come out? What has been inspired you out of your values to take action on campus?
So kind of seeing the many isms that we're talking about and that Joey mentioned, and being in Baltimore and knowing that there's so much that's happening in Baltimore that I could be a part of, that I could be helping the change, and seeing that I wanted Loyola's campus community to also care about those things. When I became one of the founding members of the Council for Inclusion, Change, and Equity, myself and a few of my peers decided that we wanted Loyola to be a more racially just place and a place where marginalized people and non-marginalized people could come together and talk about things. So one of the things that you'll be hearing about throughout the year is the racial justice training that Baltimore Racial Justice Action has been working with Loyola to create, the board that Sean is co-chair of, and that was in large part due to collaboration between not just the higher ups and administrators and staff and faculty, but also a lot of student power and students standing up and saying that they wanted things to change. So I think that has been something that has really guided my experience here, because being able to realize the power in yourself and how important the things that you care about are, and being able to put words to that was definitely something that has guided my experience here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Who has inspired you in your time at Loyola or in Baltimore to live more deeply into your values?
So that's a really hard question, because in my time here, I've gotten close to a lot of people, and a lot of people have made meaningful impact on me. So I'm gonna go off the question and choose two people. But one person specifically, I would say, is Dr. Rodney Parker, the director of Lana Services. He was really one of the first people on campus to interact with me, and when I didn't feel that I belonged at Loyola, he kind of forced me to look more deeply into what my place here was and what I could do, what I could be doing. And because of him, I decided to stay. Ooh, that's not good. And because of him, I decided to stay, and I've come to see Loyola as my home. But I would say a second person that has definitely impacted my time here at Loyola and my life has been Sarah Scalzo, the Director of Student Engagement, who's back there. So Sarah was my Messina mentor when I was a first year, and I've gotten the privilege to work with her for the past 3 years as an evergreen. And during my time here, she's really been someone who has both challenged herself to learn about me and challenged me to learn about others. And I think that during my time here, I've been able to form a deep connection with her, but also learn more about myself through the things that she's taught me. So that's definitely something that, yeah.
Thank you, Alicia. Thank you. How about we give... Our third and final guest tonight comes all the way from South Shore, Massachusetts. He's majoring in psychology, minoring in theology. He's a campus ministry intern, member of the Green and Gray Society. He's been a leader on sexual assault prevention programs on campus and does research for the psychology department. Please put your hands together and welcome Michael DiBianca.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for being here today.
Great to be here.
So, Michael, you kind of get in the landscape of where we're going here, right? Mm-hmm. First question. What value or Jesuit characteristic have you felt drawn to over your time at Loyola?
So it's hard to choose, but I think for me, discernment is the most present in my everyday life. It's kind of it's a door to the other ones for me. St. Ignatius called discernment listening to the movements of the soul, your thoughts, your desires, your emotions. And we all have those. And I think for me, doing that listening makes self-care possible, makes conversations about justice possible. And so it's, for me, again, about asking the really hard questions. You know, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What angers me? What excites me? What do I want to do? And the way that this has shown up, I think, in my both personal and professional life is that last question, is what do I want to do? When I arrived at Loyola, I was 100% sure it was not the right place for me. Like Alicia, I had no idea who the Jesuits were. And once I was convinced to stay at Loyola, I still had no idea what I wanted to major in, what I wanted to do after I graduated. Does anyone know exactly what they want to do after they graduate? And they're sure they're not going to change their mind? Great, okay, good. Because I changed my major 4 times my first year, 4 times in 1 year. And it was a roller coaster road, but I started to listen to the words of one of my favorite authors that are, your vocation. Has anyone heard that word before? Vocation is where your greatest joy meets the world's greatest need. And I think I've had to discern a lot about what that is because I felt a lot of pressure to major in something that I knew was going to be more financially stable or that was just easier or wasn't as challenging, wasn't as risky. But those weren't the same things as what I was excited by, what I felt drawn to study. And I finally landed on psychology, which was really what excites me now, and it challenges me every day. But I got there by listening to what I wanted, and not just what I wanted, but what was difficult for me and what I thought I had to give the world, which I'm still learning. And I think that listening is very key because otherwise I wouldn't know. Otherwise I would just stay at the surface level and not dig into a depth of my full potential at Loyola, which I'm nowhere near yet, but listening to get there.
Thank you, Michael. Michael, you've been talking about discernment. And I'm curious if you could talk to, what advice would you give people in the class of 2021? What advice would you give to the class of 2021? All right, we're getting there. What advice would you give to the class of 2021? Yeah. All right, good. Around discernment and what you've learned while you've been here.
Sure. I would definitely say that to every single one of you out here, your minds and your hearts and your spirits are very powerful things. And while you're here, I think you'll have the opportunity to learn how to use them, not just for others, not just for your studies and your job, but for yourself as well. Whether you talk about it through a lens of faith, of spirituality, or psychology, or just being human, I think those things I talked about, your feelings, your thoughts, your emotions, they really speak to you. They do. They can point you in the right directions, like Sean was saying. They can offer some guidance as to what you feel called to study, who you feel called to be. So I would say really listen to those, the everyday feelings of, wow, that's exciting, or this is really uncomfortable, or that makes me furious. Those feelings are key messages. So I would definitely say listen to those. And kind of going back to the self-care piece, which is my biggest challenge every day. You can ask Sean or my other supervisors in campus ministry. I need daily reminders. But there's this language about being a student first, or an athlete first, or a doctor first, a lawyer first one day. And I think it's important for us all, you and myself, to remember that we're human first. And it's important to attend to our needs of sleep, nutrition, exercise, rest, mental health, not just for ourselves, but also so that we can be better in the roles we choose to serve. So I would definitely encourage the self-care piece and listening to what you need in order to be more able to fulfill your other roles on campus and after you graduate.
Thank you, Michael. We'll give a round of applause to Michael. So I'm just going to throw this out. Michael touched on it. I really want to hear from Alicia and Joey if you have anything you want to add here. We've talked about this tension that can happen between self-care and being a person for and with others. Do you have anything you want to share, any advice you want to share for the class of 2021? You're getting it. I like it. All right.
So for those who know me, especially Evergreens, you know that I am the worst at self-care. I often put myself in a category where I'm the least prioritized when it comes to helping others. And it usually ends up in me having some kind of burnout, and there's a day where you'll be like, what's wrong with Alicia? And then you'll see me the next day and be like, oh, she really needs to get some rest, or she really needs to go eat or something like that. And I'm very guilty of not putting my needs first, but I think that's one of the things that I've learned that I need to work on during my time at Loyola, especially because you can't help others if you yourself need help. So if you are experiencing some kind of self-doubt, some kind of, you haven't gotten sleep in 4 days, because that happened to me once, and how are you helping anyone else? Because at that point, someone needs to step in and help you. So it's kind of finding that balance and being able to say, I need to step back, or this is my time to take care of myself, and know that that's not being selfish. It's taking care of yourself so that whatever work you do afterwards is going to be beneficial for everyone involved.
Yeah, I think I would just kind of repeat and say what Lisa and Michael talk about. I know my roommate David's in Evergreen, so he knows that I rarely get any sleep, but it's important because like they've said, it's you want to be the best version of yourself. And it's not being selfish for you to allow yourself to have self-care. And I think all leaders here on campus have kind of that very similar issue of finding the balance between you want to be men and women for others, but how are you that type of leader for yourself first?
Great. Thank you very much. How about a round of applause? So I just want to say that you're looking at 3 of our outstanding leaders on campus. These men and women have dedicated themselves to learning more about themselves, becoming aware about who they are. And you've heard some of the ways they have not taken care of themselves, but there have been people around you that have accompanied you, and you've invited people into that story and how to do that. So Joey, Alicia, and Michael, these are 3 people. There's tons of leaders on campus that you're going to meet who have been navigating this road, and I invite you to search them out and seek them out. Your Evergreens are another great resource. So some of what they're talking about, this tension of wanting to do more, wanting to be more, we get this idea. There's a Jesuit concept called, or a Jesuit word called the magis. Has anyone heard of the magis? Anyone? This is a great concept, and I want you to know this word. It's the magis. Say it with me, magis. No, the magis doesn't say magis like that. The magis says magis. Say it with me. Magis. Okay, a little more. Magis. All right, we're getting there. Magis. Let me define this for you. Father Brian Massengill defined the Magis as the sacred, holy relentlessness that leaves us dissatisfied and longing for what lies beyond us. Magis, he says it's the most dangerous word in our Jesuit vocabulary because it means we look at something and we desire something greater. We desire greater relationship. We desire better self-care for ourselves. We desire justice for the communities that we work with and for. In your days here, do not confuse Magis with how many things can I do. Magis is about going deeper. And that's what your Jesuit education is about, going deeper. So you have this chance. You've heard stories. You've heard the story of St. Ignatius. You're hearing stories with your peers. You're going to be telling stories. And you are writing a new chapter in your life, right? You're writing a new chapter. And your story and our stories are now merged. What will you bring to our story, to the Loyola story, to Baltimore's story? And what will Loyola and Baltimore offer you in your understanding of who you are in the world? What will be the chapters that you write over these next few years? Try not to make sure all of your chapters start with played extensive video games way into the middle of the night. Hopefully you'll have some that say, found my passion, encountered new relationships, engaged new understandings, right? What will those chapters be in your, we're going to go back. We're going to leave that there. So, the Magis, over these next 4 years, I invite you to go into the Magis. And today's presentation has just been a dip in the water, right? It hasn't been the deep end of the pool. This is an introduction. And you don't have to worry about getting to the deep end of the pool. That's 4 years from now. But today, be excited. Be aware that you are learning. You are making friends. You are going to find God in everything in your experience here. So thank you very much for your time and your energy, and we hope the rest of this day goes really well.